Hello everybody, welcome back to the Reese Talking YouTube channel. My name is Reese. Today is Wednesday, the 19th of November 2025, and in this video, I would like to respond to a comment that I received on my last video, which was about my thoughts on mass immigration or immigration in general, and is it our only problem? And I received a comment from well, maybe I'll save it, We're going to read the comment, and we're going to go over the comment, and I'm going to tell you why people who are of this mentality, people who have this mindset, are kind of lost, I would say. I don't want to say dumb, but I do want to say lost. I think lost is a good way of describing these people. Now, I'm going to drag you over to scene 3 here. Forgive the insane amount of tabs that I have open. I'm just going to bring that down just a little bit there. And it's this comment right here, right? So let's take a look, right? Now, what you might have noticed straight off the bat is that he's calling me a neo-Nazi. Now, to be honest with you, I actually didn't know what the definition of a neo-Nazi was. So I had to kind of, I'm gonna go and look that up for you as we progress. But let's just read the comment and then we'll address it. So Rational Madman says, "You're a literal neo-Nazi that pretends you're quote beyond all that. You are actually worse than some of the ethno-nationalists who simply say no non-whites. You actively demonize Jews in particular and are on a very dangerous path. If you were German rather than English, it would be so obvious what you are and represent. I'm not a leftist talking. I'm more of the Tommy Robinson thinking civic nationalist type. It's how YouTube ended up recommending you to me. I watched multiple videos of you and I'm telling you, you're in a very dangerous place mentally and are saying things you will wish you could unsay later. Please disassociate you with your neo-Nazi buddies and get more into civic nationalism and or the general conservative crowd." Now, what I want you to focus on here is the guy where he says, you actively demonize Jews in particular, and then calls me a neo-Nazi. But what I think we should do, right, is look up the definition of neo-Nazi. Because I would actually argue that there is a different group of people that you might argue are neo-Nazis. We're going to go based off the Wikipedia definition, right? So let's take a look, right? So neo-Nazism comprises all social, political, and militant movements that have progressed or idealized Nazism. Employ their ideology to promote what they perceive as the racial or ethnic supremacy, but I will ignore this part here, but the racial or ethnic supremacy of their own group to incite or engage in hatred or discrimination against demographic minorities. Now, what it says also is often anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And so I would ask, right, you know, what have I actually come out with here that says, well, I'm a white supremacist? Because I don't think I've actually said anything like that. You know, this idea that I would be, that the white race is supreme is not something that I don't think I've ever said. Maybe you can point me towards where I have said that. But what I want to focus on is this ethnic supremacy, right? Because I would ask you, right, if, let's say, I had a book, or I read a book, and I followed a book, and my book said that the group of people that I represent, let's say hypothetically it's white people, it says that they are God's chosen people, for example, hypothetically, in a hypothetical world. Would that lend to ethnic supremacy? If I was to say that whites are God's chosen people, would that be me as a white supremacist? Just asking. And let's say, as a coincidence, let's say whilst we were doing that, or let's say whilst I was claiming that white people were God's chosen people, whilst I was doing that, I was actually colonizing a area of land in the Middle East, say Palestine, which was very much Muslim population, and I described the Muslims as, say, cattle or goyim, less than me. They, they aren't the same. They are basically, animals. They're beasts, right? Would that make me a neo-Nazi? Because it seems to me, not only is it talking about Islamophobia, but that would be, by definition, a neo-Nazi, would it not? So, what I'm saying here is that if there are any neo-Nazis in the world, some people who definitely aren't me, definitely not, might argue that it's actually the Zionists who are in Palestine right now, who believe that they are God's chosen people, and therefore they have the divine right to the land occupied by primarily Muslims, but also Christians. And let's say, hypothetically, they view them as less than them, cattle, beasts, animals. They have the right to rape people of this ethnic group. That is definitionally neo-Nazism, right? So that's just to go back to just to touch on this neo-Nazism idea, because generally it is a lot of the time projection when people talk about neo-Nazism, right? And then if we go back to the comment, so we understand literal neo-Nazi. Now this is, he says he's not a leftist talking, but this is what leftists do. This is what leftists do. They will use labels, and a lot of the time they will project. They will say you're this, but it's actually what they are. Like, for example, they'll say that you're a racist because you want to minimize immigration, but then they'll happily allow loads of refugees in, and they'll let them work for cheaper because cheap labor, right? So they kind of project a lot, right? And he's talking about, if I was German rather than English, it'd be obvious what you are and represent. So he's effectively insinuating that I'm like a Hitler lover and stuff like that, right? And I'm worse than ethno-nationalists who simply say no non-whites because I actively demonize Jews. But what he's actually getting at here is my understanding of Barbara Specter's testimony, or my understanding of the Jewish prophecy, which is that Islam is the broom of Israel, and they use this religion to penetrate Europe, to radicalize people in the name of radical Islamism, jihad, spread jihad in the name of Allah, and make Europe multicultural or non-white, basically, and non-Christian. That's not even demonizing Jews in any way. That's just recognizing what they say, Barbara Specter or other rabbis. And so, yeah, then he says, I'm not a leftist talking. Well, you sound like a leftist to me. I'm more of the Tommy Robinson thinking civic nationalist type. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, well, it makes a lot of sense that he's calling you a neo-Nazi if he loves Tommy Robinson. And he's got an issue with me demonizing Jews because he's clearly someone who is pro-Israel. Because anyone who thinks critically and is in the political sphere and understands politics supports Tommy Robinson for one reason, understands that people support Tommy Robinson for one reason, because they are either brainwashed to believe that Islam is the only problem with regard to immigration in this country, or they are pro-Israel. That's it. That's it. Or maybe they're brainwashed to believe that Tommy Robinson is for the British, pro-England, right? And he's a civic nationalist type. So let's look at the definition of civic nationalism, also known as democratic nationalism. It adheres to the traditional liberal values of freedom, tolerance, equality, and individual rights, and is not based on ethnocentrism. Defend the value of national identity by saying individuals need it as a partial shared aspect of their identity. And it's a political identity built around shared citizenship with the state. Thus, a civic nation divides itself not by culture, but by political institutions. Now, I reject this wholesale. The idea that a nation wouldn't define itself by its culture is completely incoherent, because it means that there is no culture. It's effectively what the left says, well, you have no culture, so let us enrich you with our culture. We're going to, have all of these different shops, different people, different communities, and you have no culture, so let us enrich it. Right, with our culture. But it doesn't define itself by culture, but by political institutions and liberal principles. And the civic nation is open to every person by citizenship, regardless of culture or ethnicity. Now, I don't actually understand how anyone can even think this. I don't understand how anyone can believe that in a given nation, everyone can be a citizen regardless of the culture or ethnicity. So you're telling me that so long as a Somalian living in a tribe, or I don't know, you can take any someone from the Amazon rainforest, right, somehow makes their way over here, like part of these native tribes, they come over here and they say, I am of English values, I'm tolerant, I am whatever. They are just as much of a citizen as the rest of us. You're insane if you actually think that. And this is effectively the hijacking of the concern about immigration, but still keeping it in the bubble of liberalism and left-wing ideology, because that's what civic nationalism is all about. It's recognizing that the Overton window is shifting on immigration because of all of the insane things that are happening in this country because of immigration and all of the negatives that we're witnessing and the replacement element. So people are understanding now that immigration is a problem. So it's like, we need to be nationalist, but it's where everybody's welcome. And you see all of these civic nationalists, civnats, as they're known as. They are a cancer to our society, because just like Tommy Robinson, he hijacks the nationalist movement and steers it towards a liberal sense of no culture, no shared culture, no shared identity, and also pro-Israel and anti-Islam. That's why you hear so much that Islam isn't compatible with the West, because it's all about demonizing Islam. Now, further from that, he says he's more of the Tommy Robinson thinking type, right? And then he says, I watched multiple videos of you and I'm telling you, you're in a very dangerous place mentally and are saying things you wish you could unsay later. Please disassociate with your neo-Nazi buddies and get more into the civic nationalism crowd or general conservative crowd. Now, if you thought that this comment was going to push me towards civic nationalism, including the name Tommy Robinson, you're insane. But the idea that I have got any neo-Nazi buddies is absolutely farcical. Because most people in the political sphere online are really dumb. And I try not to associate with them because of that. Like, for example, I'm not going to start naming names. But there are people who kind of, resemble this kind of ideology where they demonize literally everybody who isn't part of their group, no matter how much they align with them, as far as ideology is concerned. But I don't actually have any neo-Nazi buddies. However, I want to go back to, the idea that I'm in a dangerous place mentally. I'm okay. But Tommy Robinson, right? Now, Tommy Robinson is a false idol. Many people revere Tommy Robinson, and many people have revered Tommy Robinson for a very, very long time. Now, not to flex or anything, but I have never revered Tommy Robinson, because I've always found Tommy Robinson to be suspect because of his lack of criticism of general immigration as opposed to Islamic immigration. And he's very much on the Islamic thing, and he's been very pro-Israel for a very long time. And also, as well as him, but Katie Hopkins, I did kind of listen to her for a little bit, but then I realized that she's not quite pro-Britain. Now, I would ask you, if someone is pro the UK, pro Britain, and they're an activist like this, like Tommy Robinson, you would think that they are going to get funding from British people living in the UK, people who are English, who are concerned about the English. But you would be extremely hard pressed to find any single individual from the UK who has given money to Tommy Robinson that isn't a donation, like when people get manipulated into giving him money because of his legal expenses or because he's going to jail. What he actually does, allegedly, some people might say, is launder donations and launder money into non-profits to avoid tax, right? That's what some people allege, not me. That's not what I'm saying, right? But let's take a look at Tommy Robinson's funding, right? Because, again, as I've said, none of it actually comes from the United Kingdom, anyone who's actually based in this country. So, United States cash, right? The result of his Shillman fellowships, we did a fellowship with Robert Shillman, or Dr. Bob, in 2017, to right-wing Canadian website Rebel Media, now called Rebel News, to the tune of about £85,000 a year. Shillman, who calls himself Dr. Bob, is said to be a key figure in the transatlantic counter-jihad movement, right? And he's also working with the Rebel News and right-wing think tank, the David Horowitz Freedom Center, where the aim is to promote freedom and expose the lies of the radical left and the Islamist movement and their allies in the media, as well as Katie Hopkins and etc., right? So, Shillman, former board member of the Friends of the Israeli Defense Forces, hosts a pro-Israel podcast and also funds fellowships through the David Horowitz, the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And Laura Loomer is another recipient of Robert Shillman's money, and he also paid for Dutch far-right politician Geert Wilders. So this is Tommy here, part of a international movement funded by Shillman, Because what all of these people have in common, Geert Wilders, Robinson, Hopkins, and Loomer, is that they're pro-Israel. Furthermore, financial backing and political support by an Israel lobby centered largely in Tel Aviv in the United States enabled, quote, far-right British activism to be more prominent. And this is just another example, effectively. And what I want you to listen to here is this video. And you can go ahead and tell me after listening to this if you think Tommy Robinson is pro the UK or pro a different nation.
Benjamin Netanyahu, Palestine, I can't remember his name. And then I got my Zionist card out, which said, I am a Zionist. And I bought everything. Well, you didn't buy nothing. Shalom. Harry, listen, let me tell you something. Yeah? If there was a war tomorrow, which there will be, because I'll probably start at the end of the session. If there was a war and it kicked off, I would be there on the front line fighting for Israel. Do you know why? Why not? Why not? It's like Celtic. That's when I make his dad come up to me earlier talking about Celtic. Like, oh yeah, but yeah, Celtic Rangers. You know what I mean? Palestine. Palestine. Why would you support Benjamin?
So, does that sound like someone who is pro-Britain to you? Oh. Or does it sound like someone who is pro-Israel to you? Let me know. You can tell me, right? Now, this article goes on and on and on, talks about loads of different things, Center for Vigilant Freedom and all these other things. But I want to get into another funder, right, of Tommy Robinson, which is the Middle Eastern Forum. Now, this is where you really need to wake the fuck up, right here, what I'm about to tell you, right? This is the disconnect between the civ-nats, even the ethno-nats, and the ones who have got their tinfoil hat on. I might as well put it on right now. Because you people, all of you, the civ-nats, the ethno-nats, you really, all of you need to start putting your freaking hats on, right? Oh, God. I mean, I need to fix mine. Mine is it's a bit mash up. Bear with. Right. So let's have a look. Right? So, where are we looking here? According to the Middle Eastern Forum, the organization is sponsoring and organizing the second Free Tommy Robinson gathering. The statement was signed by the MEF director, who previously worked in Israel's defense and foreign ministries. And the MEF Middle Eastern Forum president, Daniel Pipes, meanwhile, has been described by the Southern Poverty Law as an anti-Muslim activist. They also funded Geert Wilders. And, as he says, a notorious hardline pro-Israel conservative think tank has claimed that it is helping fund the legal expenses of jailed far-right British activist Tommy Robinson, the Middle Eastern Forum. Now, as it says, right, the president is Daniel Pipes. And as it happens, Daniel Pipes actually founded the Middle Eastern Forum. Now, this is where their tinfoil hat goes on. And you people need to start waking up to this reality, especially the pro-Israel people. All of you, right, need to start waking up to this reality right here, right? In October 2001, Daniel Pipes. By the way, Daniel Pipes' father is Richard Pipes, and Richard Pipes was a professor of Middle Eastern, of foreign policy in the Middle East in America, right? And he was Jewish. Daniel Pipes is Jewish. Richard Pipes' dad was Jewish, and they've got a big interest, a big concern about what's going on in the Middle East. Why do you think that is? Think about it. Might have something to do with Israel. I don't know. Just think about it, right? But put the hat on. Now look here. In October 2001, Daniel Pipes said before a convention of the American Jewish Congress, "I worry very much from the Jewish point of view that the presence and increased stature and affluence and enfranchisement of American Muslims, because they are so much led by an Islamist leadership, that this will present true dangers to American Jews." What are you noticing about this? Daniel Pipes is concerned with dangers to American Jews, and he's saying this in October 2001. What happened before October 2001, a month before? 9/11. Now, if you think that 9/11 had nothing to do with Israel, then you need to pull your head out of your ass immediately. So, in conclusion, what can we gather from this? Well, we can gather that Israel has got agents like Tommy Robinson or Katie Hopkins or Laura Loomer or Geert Wilders all around the Western world operating for the furtherance of, Zionism and establishing a state of greater Israel. Why is that relevant? Because you are revering a false idol in Tommy Robinson who is pushing civic nationalism, which erodes still the culture and the identity of any given nation. So to call me a neo-Nazi is insane, because you actually support neo-Nazis who believe in the Holy Land that belongs to God's chosen people, which is clearly an idea that believes that they reign supreme over any given individual, and they have the right to the land because of a book written years ago, and therefore I should support your ideology and not my ideology. Now, if you still believe that 9/11 was completely organic, conducted by Muslims, done by Islamist terrorists, I strongly encourage you to watch the Zeitgeist movie, which I'll leave a link for in the description down below, and watch the part about 9/11. It's part 2 of the entire film. It starts off with religion and then it goes into 9/11 and it says the world's a stage. Watch that part of that documentary and you will absolutely be sure of the fact that the mainstream narrative is a lie. And then you're going to think about the fact that a lot of Jews didn't go to work that day and there were dancing Israelis, and then after that they went into war on behalf of a foreign country, which is Israel. And then you're going to start connecting the dots and realize, at least if you're an honest critical thinker, then you're going to realize that the mainstream narrative was a lie, and the reason why it's a lie was to, allow for a pretense to go into the Middle East and destabilize these countries. So I'm not going to outline the case for you in this video. Go and watch the Zeitgeist movie. Go to part 2 where it talks about the world's a stage and it talks about 9/11, and that's all there for you. And if you're wondering why this is even relevant, it's because if we go back to scene 3, as it says in October 2001, as I pointed out, Daniel Pipes, who's the founder of the Middle Eastern Forum, which funds Tommy Robinson at least partially, said that he was concerned about the dangers to American Jews as a result of an Islamist leadership and American Muslims. Therefore, we need to eradicate radical Islamism, and that's the reason why they fund Tommy Robinson, is to get you, believing in this idea that the Western man should be worried about Islamism in the Middle East, because who else is worried about Islamism in the Middle East? Israel, because they need to have greater Israel, or that's what they want. They want greater Israel, and this has been talked about multiple times by Netanyahu and other people, and therefore they need these operatives, these agents in the Western countries, Geert Wilders, Laura Loomer, Tommy Robinson, to convince the Western man that it's Islam and radical Islamism which is the problem, and therefore give your money to Israel, maybe even fight for Israel like Tommy Robinson said he would. And so, yeah, that's all I've got to say in this video. I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate you watching. If you have enjoyed, then remember to leave a like and subscribe. I would appreciate that. And yeah, don't call me a conspiracy theorist until you've watched the Zeitgeist movie part 2. So, as in like part 2 of the Zeitgeist movie. Again, link in the description. Appreciate your time, everybody. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. Take it easy.